Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Carmen de la Serna. I'm responsible for social projects here in Fundación Telefónica, and I'd like to welcome all of you to this Espacio Fundación, which is the showcase for a lot of the things that we do here in Spain. And we're very proud that only after more or less 2 years' time of having been open, we are one of the most innovative cultural centers in Madrid. So welcome, and afterwards I'll tell you what you need to see while you're here. We have something on not nearly every day. We have something on every single day of the year. There are many interesting things to see, and I'm sure that this afternoon will be no exception. Over the last 12 months, we have had 120 events held here, more than 900 educational events, 7 exhibits with more than 430,000 visitors attending them, and we have had streaming or people here in this room. The total number have been 7,000 who've been either listening and watching through streaming or here in person. And so this is something we're really interested in, the challenge to education, Desafío Educativos, and thank you for being here today to support us. We talk often about art, digital culture, technology, science, and how technologies strengthen and make art and creativity even more powerful. As I said, we have training sessions, conferences, exhibits, and I do have to recommend the 2 exhibits that are ongoing right now. Here on the 3rd floor, we have 9 really interesting installations by an electronic artist, Hemet, who is he's even had exhibits of work at Museum of Modern Art Museum in New York, and we have another exhibit of an artist who has really taken advantage of technology available back in the 1920s to achieve some wonderful art in the field of photography. So don't miss those 2 exhibits. Fundación Telefónica is a lot more than that, which is already a lot in and of itself. We work in 16 countries in Europe and in Latin America. In Latin America, we have a presence through important social projects focusing on children, adolescents, mainly in the most vulnerable population areas, through education and through the building of competencies. And we support adolescents in their work and learning new technologies to transform the way they learn. And we work with teachers too, of course, and we're working in the UK, Germany, and Spain, focusing more on young people and in developing their capabilities through training and entrepreneurship. Education has always been one of the main focuses of Fundación Telefónica for obvious reasons. It's the key to the future for any society, but certainly a foundation of a telco company like ours. We know how much and how these new technologies are changing the world that we live in and where we learn and develop our talents. And we know how much education needs to change to adapt to the needs of this new world. We also know that it's got to change quickly, not just a lot, but we're not all sure about how it has to change, and we don't have the pathways charted out yet. But that is one of the reasons that we're here today. It's to help explore and identify needs and trends, and certainly to convince society that these changes are imperative, and the model of education that we now have has been unservable for this new world for quite some time. We have another additional problem, which is especially present in Europe. We have something that isn't good at all. It's the lack of interest in training in math, science, technology, and engineering. This is a problem that exists more in Europe than in other continents and really puts development of productivity, competitiveness at risk in Europe. And this is somewhat the reason for which we're here today. This matter of great importance occupies a great part of Telefónica España's the Foundation's activities this year, and the contents and the results of our work is what we would like to present. Pablo Gonzalo will tell you about how we've gone about working on this project, who has been part of it, and I'd like to thank all of those who have taken part of the panel of experts that we have had, the judges for the excellency projects that we have looked at, and we've got the 3 most innovative projects here to go into today. And if we could search in an orderly way for specific solutions that we could undertake and implement to make headway, we would be very satisfied and think that we've made a lot of progress. But that's up to Pablo to explain to you what we've done with these awards. So thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you, all of you, for having come. I'm Pablo Gonzalo. I'm head of Desafío Educación in Fundación Telefónica. And I'm here also with Miguel de Paladilla, who is head of research in the social area. And we'll talk together to you, tell you why we've done what we've done and how we've gone about it. And before we go into each project, I'd like to thank Carmen and all of you for your presence here today, especially those persons from the community of Madrid, from the ministry, who are very involved in education, and all of you who are from different institutions, as well as the citizens. Now I'll give a very brief introduction to the presentation. This is the program that we have scheduled for today. As I said, Miguel and I will tell you about the basis of this. We have the 3 innovators that are here today to tell you firsthand about their innovations. And even though we have limited time, we will try to dedicate 5 minutes after each innovation project so you can ask questions if you would like, and we can have a little debate. Then, and I'm sorry to just be able to tell you only about 3 innovation projects, because this year we have had many and very interesting, and we'd like to give you just a small summary of other projects that we have encountered, and you'll be able to read about them in the report that we've issued. It's available online, and you'll also have it available to you when you leave after the cocktail following this presentation, and you can take home a copy of the research. We also think it's very good and interesting to make this transfer of knowledge to all of you here. I'll go quickly and first cover the figures that Carmen mentioned. I'd like to make a lot of emphasis about how Telefónica is very committed to education, and as you can see in Pro Niño, which is our program in Latin America, we have worked in the past 10 years with more than 470,000 children, trying to reduce labor among children. We've worked very intensively with teachers in Latin America as well. These are figures from 2013 at the close of last year. We've trained almost 8,000 professors or teachers who give classes in Latin America. We've worked in Europe also in forming young entrepreneurs. We have more than 54,000 young entrepreneurs and almost 3,400 projects involved with them. We also work in transferring knowledge through this space. and through our publications, through this space here and through three other spaces that we have in Latin America, where almost more actually than 85,000 persons have attended events and more than 700,000 people have attended exhibits that we have held there. The publications that we have been online, have been downloaded more than 400,000 times, and I hope that Desafío Educación helps increase this number because we have so much interesting knowledge available. And for all of the persons in Telefónica who are volunteers, we channel their volunteerism with a big number of active volunteers who participate in our programs, more than 26,000 volunteers. And this brings us, as Carmen said, to certainly try to do things to meet the challenges facing education in the places where we have a presence. In Europe, one of the most relevant is this space, this project here, the growth of the gap between companies and society, between profiles which are scientific and technological, and the scarce number of persons who are dedicating their efforts to studying these careers. I think it's especially dramatic and also important and urgent in a country such as Spain, where you must all be aware, and it surprises me constantly, we have 55% unemployment in our young people. The design of this project, of many of the companies working with us on it, said, well, 25% of the scientific technological profiles I need to contract, I can't find them in Spain. I have to look abroad. And how can this be when at the same time we have this high unemployment? So truly, the urgency for solving this problem is tremendous. With Eurostat statistics, 12 of every 13 young people finish STEM, but the demand of these professionals the demand for them is growing 3 times faster than the number of new persons coming out in this field. So we really have to do something quickly. Something else that occurs and that we shouldn't forget is that some of the professionals, or many of the professionals and young persons finishing these careers don't have a really solid base in math or in science, etc., etc. So this is a problem with different nuances, but we should say that we urgently need to tackle it. Many institutions are already doing so. Among them, we are, but we've also wanted in this project to do these 3 specific things. First, to explore. We know that in Spain and in Europe things are being done. Some of them we're aware of, but we've wanted to go out and see elsewhere and explore what innovations are being undertaken internationally that are really bringing clear results about and make an increase in efforts to foster them. And after we've explored this, researched this, and identified them, we want to give them visibility and bring the best innovators here, introduce them to you so you can become familiar with them, make our publication about their work, etc., etc. And it's also, we have a job to be facilitators so that some of these innovations at some point can be implemented in Spain. And this is something that later on Miquel will talk about. One of the criteria we've identified to find these new innovations is that they need to have such characteristics that they can be adapted to our country and be replicated elsewhere and make a big difference here in Spain and elsewhere. And after this event, we will have time, let's say 6 months period of time in Telefónica, where we will work as facilitators to try to match up these innovations and stakeholders who could be interested in implementing these innovations, public as well as private entities. So I thank all of you who are here today and may be able to help us in this process that is about to begin. So we are fully available to you if you have questions. And without further delay, I'll pass the microphone over to Miguel, and he will tell you how we have done this. Well, thank you very much. Basically, what you've heard Pablo say is he's put the problem into context and given us an idea of the dimension of the challenge we're facing. We were working together with the Autonomous University of Barcelona, and to understand the different levers we needed to handle to understand and identify the problem, not just the dimension and the reasons we were having these problems, but we wanted to see what we could do to change the situation. And we found 4 levers or factors, and that's where we started our research. The first of these levers is the most evident, probably. It's the educational factor, the competencies that young people have, the deficit that we have, let us say, of competencies that we have that keep our young people from acquiring this knowledge, scientific and technological knowledge. And then we have the psychological factors and the perception of concordance between the personal features and requisites in training and the professional requisites. And then there's the informative factor, the information factor, let us say, knowledge about the working or professional possibilities that exist. And then there's the 4th factor, which is social. It's the perception that we have of scientists and technicians. We've got to break that old stereotype of the guy with big thick glasses on who looks like a square geek. But we've got to really work on making this something more tangible and normal. And based on these 4 factors, we tried also to identify what actors, what stakeholders we wanted to involve and work with, not just the typical ones of students, parents, and teachers. We wanted to move into the world of corporate volunteers, companies, centers where all of these activities are taught outside of the school classroom, and institutions that have a big role to play. So we're trying to use these 4 factors and these various agents to put this change to work. And when we talk about innovation, it's important to describe and define innovation and to say that innovation is not merely invention. It's not a new idea simply. It's applying that new idea to the market, to society, and getting it to generate value. And ultimately, these 2 definitions, which are on the screen, are what screen we like the best. And we wanted to apply to them a series of benchmarkers or indicators that could tell us what we're really looking for. First is innovation with evidence of impact. We don't want things that have never been tried. We want innovations that have been tried and proven, and we have empirical knowledge. And then the second is utility. We want value behind the innovation, and we want people and all agents involved to be able to identify that value and, if possible, pay for it. So therefore, we measure ways of generating that change, using those levers to achieve sustainable income flows, because if we wait for governments to just subsidize, we'll be waiting years and years before we can make any changes. The 3rd factor is scope. And scope is very essential. It's not about looking for Band-Aids when we have a hemorrhage. We need something, we need innovations that can grow quicker than the problem can, because today we have too many little patches or Band-Aids to stave off problems. But in the process, the first thing was understanding the challenge well and finding the levers to work with innovations. And then we did all the research In research, we used CRISIM, we used Telefónica Network, Wyra, we used the main world networks of innovators, which are recognized, Shoka, Avina, Skoll, Shop Foundation, etc. They're all listed. And after we did that, it was trying to understand what proven innovations existed. And when we realized we understood the challenge, but we hadn't made a diagnosis that was very detailed of the problem, nevertheless, we wanted to have a jury made up of public administration, companies, academic experts, students, etc., to know which of the innovations had the greatest impact in Spain. And on that work, based on that, the jury that we set up and who are here today, through these innovations that they selected, we've tried to understand what mechanisms exist to replicate these projects in Spain. And then we organized this event, and we're having it here today in Madrid, tomorrow in Barcelona. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow we have meetings with local stakeholders or actors who might be interested in implementing these innovations. And as of next week, we will begin to facilitate implementation, because we don't want this to just be a report that looks very pretty and it's in our library. We want this to actually be the beginning of something big that will be the implementation of these solutions to stop the problems that are beating on our door. And we're very lucky to have people like companies like Everest and the Universidad de Mayores, the University for Adults, CREAS, Calias, Castilla-La Mancha, regional training body, Microsoft, Telefónica Learning Services, Fundación La Caixa, UTAD, Fundación Accenture, Universidad Politécnica Madrid, Instituto de Tecnologías Educativas, Formación del Profesorado, and people here from Telefónica. And some of the jury, we'd like to thank you, Universidad, Juanjo, Creas, Jesus. I'd also like to take advantage to mention now your names, and thank you, Anna, of course. You're here in front of me. I hadn't seen you, but your help has been essential throughout the process during the definition of the channel and selection of the jury. Well, it was no light feat. We had a lot. She had to do a lot. All of them did. We had 20 innovation projects they had to study based on 5 criteria, and it took more hours to look at each one. And we know we had members in our jury who had very precious time and little time. But first of all, the potential impact of this innovation, I have to say it's going to have a really big, that was one of the big factors that had to have. The project had to have a big initial impact. And then we had to look at the barriers that existed before we could implement that, or that would be required to solve before we could innovate that. The project needed to be sustainable. Was it going to have to depend on public subsidies, or could we find someone who could pay us for that service and we could scale it up? The fourth factor, innovation, the degree of innovation, how does this change us? Well, we weren't just looking outside internationally, we were looking in Spain. We realized that many innovations here that are very good oftentimes go unnoticed. So that was a hypothesis that we included. And then speedy results, timely results. We're all in a hurry and want quick results. So that was something that was also one of our criteria. And based on this, we identified 163 innovations in the world, and then there were 100 that we studied, and 20 that we presented finally to the jury. And in this report, issued by Telefónica, which is great, it's on the website, you've got multimedia resources, it's also available on paper. You can read about all of the top 100 innovations. Certainly there are a lot that come from Europe and North America, but we found innovations in Australia, South Africa, India, many in Latin America and Central America. And these are the 3 innovations that we'll present to you today. And without more delay, we'll turn the floor over to them. And we want to help connect them with local entities and accompany them in the process, facilitate things for them. Well, thank you. That's great. The first innovation we'll hear from is Absolvud. Elena Murphy will talk about apps for good. Let's give her an applause. Thank you. And before I leave you with her, I would like to give you a little information about innovation. Elena, you might mention some, but 17,000 students have been involved in the UK in these innovations, and many 400 volunteers. And well, thank you, Pablo.
With you all, and my name is Eleanor Murphy. I'm in charge at this time of the international partnerships, and I work with our founder and CEO, Iris Lipinski. What I'm here to present to you today is a program which gives young people the opportunity to create apps to change their world. So, what is Apps for Good? Apps for Good is an open source tech education movement. We are a UK-based charity at this time, and our vision is to grow a new global generation of young people who have the tools and the knowledge to create, market, launch apps, a product, in effect, that can change the world for the better. And that vision is based on the ideology of a Brazilian education philosopher, Paulo Freire, who really wanted to get people, when they're learning, to put their learning into action. So we also, I should mention, are part of an international network, and CDI, global, and CDI is based in Brazil. So hence how we base our philosophy on that of a Brazilian educationalist. But our key principles then is that we're getting students to lead their learning. So it's inquiry-led education. That there's the opportunity to work in teams together, skills which going forward young people more and more are going to need, and listening to Pablo and to Miguel talking about the needs here in Spain, these are some fundamental skills for young people to be learning and applying. That in the process as well of their learning journey, that young people have the opportunity to apply their learning to real-life problems, to problems that they identify. That is another key principle, that our young people participating in our program are given the opportunity to choose their idea, and that in their groups they will work on that idea that they have identified. So they can pick problems that are close to them, family, friends, or in their community. And how they're tackling those problems is by using technology as a tool. So at this time, we're currently working with mobile, social, and web apps, and giving the young people participating in the program and the educators working with them the tools to do so. So our approach is that we are taking on then 21st century pedagogy. We are looking to disrupt the current framework for teaching, the traditional model of the teacher being the fountain of knowledge, standing at the head of the classroom, and the student sitting there dutifully, like you all today, listening to the class. What we're looking for is here on the right-hand side is an opportunity for young people to be leading the way, and for the educator, if you see here ring down at the bottom, the educator is someone who guides them through that process, a mentor, a coach. Supporting the educator in that is an expert. We're working with, and we have a community now of 738 experts working with us. These are people from industry, from commercial sector, who volunteer their time to work with the educators, giving sessions directly to the students on aspects such as idea screening, business modeling, how to market your idea. So they're engaging with the students, and 90% of those sessions take place through Skype. So it's virtual contact, another skill which increasingly is important in our world today with technology. Here on this slide, what I'm presenting to you is an overview of the process of our program. So the course is delivered over a period of 30 to 50 hours. We have 5 modules that make up that course. And we're looking here then from the starting point of the idea generation, the screening of the idea. Then the students move on to scoping that idea, developing that as an idea for an app prototype, that they then go into the stage of product development, so that by the end of the 5 modules of the course, and the 5th module of the course is that they enter a pitch competition situation. And we run every year nationally a competition in which all the schools and the students that participate in our program have the opportunity to apply to compete. We then go through a selection process, and on the 23rd of June this year we held what we call our Apps for Good Awards, and we had some 18 schools come to present their ideas in a Dragon's Den, following the BBC program, in a Dragon's Den environment, so that the students get the opportunity to meet with the dragons, their judges. They are amongst our corporate sponsors, trustees, people who are in the expert community, so that they have direct contact and the opportunity of presenting in a very short space of time their ideas. And we had some fantastic winners this year, who will now, going forward, spend 6 months working with app developers, so that come by the end of the year, they will actually see their app prototype developed to be an app that will go to market. So we are effectively offering, it's a program where it's coding, but coding with a purpose. And we are offering that through a lean startup approach. And we are offering that also that it is a more holistic approach. It's not just STEM. It's also what we call STEAMed learning. So we have 3 added elements. We're adding arts, we're adding entrepreneurship, and we're adding design, drama, so that young people bring together a whole range of skills. And in addition, it's important to note here that the educators with whom we work have a good deal of independence to apply the materials, the content that we prepare and that is available through our platform. So who are we working with? Our key audiences, so as I've mentioned, the students, also our alumni, our fellows of the Apps for Good program. In addition, the educators, so we are working primarily in schools, and I will come on to mention our current reach. At this time, we are in 208 schools in the UK and a number of schools as well internationally. We work with the experts who volunteer with us, and here is a selection of the corporate funders and partners that we have. They play a key role with us in that they finance the content, the platform, the opportunity for us to offer an open source free program to the schools. And so our offer is that we have our content. It's open source free learning content. From this year, 2014, 2015, it is being reviewed on an ongoing basis, and we're also offering one-stop shop discounts. So we're working with tech companies so that they can offer tools to young people that they can use, either discounted or free or of charge. And the communities, the key communities we're working with are the educators, the teachers in the schools, in the institutions where our program is being offered, and with the expert community of mentors. And through our platform, the educators, the students have access to the content, to our material. So it is an in-house platform. It is purpose-built with the opportunity for access to the content, for expert matching, and also for submitting the awards, and also for us to monitor our impact and keep records of the results of our program. So our current reach at this time, we are UK-based, and we have been operating in the UK since early 2010. And as you can see from the left-hand side, if you're looking at the operational year of 2010-2011, we had 47 students. We have now reached, in effect, in recent years, an cumulative figure of over 23,300 students. We currently, in this operational year, are working with some 17,000 students in the UK, as Pablo mentioned, but we've also piloted in the last 12 months 2 initiatives, one in Washington State in the USA and one in Catalonia. And there we've had the opportunity to reach some 300 students in Washington State through some 30 schools, and up to 6,000 students through some 198 schools that are participating in the M-Schools program, which I'll touch on towards the end of this presentation. So 80% of the courses are implemented in the school timetable, and 98% of that is in a formal learning environment. That is a significant shift. Say 3 years ago, if you'd looked at those 47 students, many of them would have been in after-school clubs, in much more informal environment. So talking of our audience and our impact, based on the figures, and these are UK-based figures that I'm sharing with people, with you all this afternoon, that I just want to highlight 2 points which I think are important, that we are offering this to 10 to 18-year-olds at this time, and 70% of those that are actually participating in the course in the UK come from the age group of 13 to 15 years of age. An interesting fact as well is that in the last 2 years, we've managed to maintain a balance of 50-50%, more or less, in engagement of boys and girls in the program, which is an important point. And in terms of when you're looking at the UK, number of women involved in tech industry at this time is 17%. We've got 49% of the students participating who are girls. And also in terms of reach, keeping a focus on being socially inclusive as well, we maintain a focus to ensure that we reach as wide an audience, as diverse an audience as possible. So we have 30% of the students participating in the program last year were from a non-white ethnic background. I want to give you just a couple of case studies before I wrap up. So the first case study that I want to present to you here is from right up in the northeast of Scotland, a school which is one of our ninja education school. We have a fantastic teacher based up there, Chris Aiken. Last year he was recognized as a TalkTalk digital hero. And 2 of the award-winning applications in our awards last year, 2013, Cattle Manager and Doglog, came from that school. They also won the productivity category in this year's awards as well. These are the kind of schools we love to work with, because we are engaged with an educator who is an early adopter, who drives his students, gets them engaged, works with them, but they're the ones that push their ideas forward. I also just want to touch on the case study, which is relevant because we're here in Spain, that we've been working in the last 12 months in cooperation with the GSMA, which is it drives the initiative of the Mobile World Congress, and also the Generalitat de Catalunya. So we help inspire them for a cross-sector partnership where we presented to them the content from 2012-2013, which they took. They translated into Catalan, they adapted so that it was relevant to the context of working in schools in Catalonia. And you can see from the timeline here that In September of last year, the content adaptation process was completed. They went through a process of training teachers and launched courses in January of this year. And as we understand, they're reaching then 196 schools, just to correct my figure from earlier, and up to some 6,000 students. So we've provided them advice and guidance as well as original content, and our content is licensed under a Creative Commons license, which you can access more details from our website. So to finish off looking at the opportunity that we have here in Spain, it's about scaling impact in partnership. That is how we are looking to work going forward as we internationalize our program. We want passionate education innovators. We want more Chris's to work with. But we are also realistic. We also understand that, there's a whole variety of teachers that we could work with. There's a whole variety of educational institutions that we could work with here in Spain. And in blue, I'm just highlighting some of the opportunities that we foresee for working in Spain. So we could potentially be running a pilot where we've got some 30 schools. In 3 years' time, that could, based on our experiences of working in the UK, that could grow up to some 200 schools. We have leading-edge technology content, and that this is, at this stage, it's open source, it's English language materials, and with access to top-end tech tools. And that we're also engaged then with industry government partners at a regional and national level. Exactly as Pablo and Miguel were speaking, this is a fantastic opportunity for us to make these essential contacts with people who hopefully we look forward to working with over the next 6 months to implement our program here in Spain. And that what we have as an offer then is as I mentioned earlier, the content, the platform, the data, and we really value the engagement with experts and the contribution that those experts can make, and those can include amongst our sponsors, employee volunteering programs. We're looking to ensure that there are skills for the 21st century workplace, and not only the workplace, but society at large. So you can get young people who've got teamwork, communication, coding, product design, marketing. There's a whole range of opportunities and skills that these young people engaging with our program can gain. And in terms of scaling up, where we could be by 2020, is that there is the potential to reach into tens of thousands of young people who have graduated from the program and who will have had the opportunity to have produced an app prototype at the very least, and if they are successful in competing and receiving an award, then they can see that app go to market. Thank you very much. So
Thank you very much, Elena. Tenemos un turno de preguntas.
Now, if you want to pose any kind of question, we have some minutes. I'd like to ask you to wait for the microphone to pose a question so that the translators can translate for the streaming. Although I don't know what language you're going to use.
¿Alguna pregunta, duda, cuestión?
Is there any question?
Muchas gracias, Elena.
Thank you very much. My name is Jesus from Ceuta. I'm interested about something very specific in the project. If it can help us, what are we talking about when we talk about the learning of teachers?
I've been explaining as well with those stakeholders who we've been meeting with. In the past, what we were doing was holding regional workshops where we met with key teachers who then became the trainers of the trainers. So it's training the trainers in the sense that they would then be going on to train teachers. However, over the past couple of years, the lessons that we have learned is that moving forward, increasingly, and as we grow the program, the opportunities for holding that direct contact become more challenging. But in addition to that, as I mentioned, you need to acquire skills for working virtually. And so we have put with the new content 2014-15, 90% of that content will be done virtually. So in terms of preparing the teachers, we have the content which has been launched now at the end of May, preparing them up until early September. And we've created a space in our platform that's dedicated to the teachers, where we are providing them with materials and tools, so they're given the framework to follow through the content, the 5 modules, which are then also broken down. It is all presented there for them in a sense, not quite scripted, because as I said, it is, it's up to them as well in terms of how they deliver it. What we do ask is that they deliver the complete course. That is a key point. But they have the opportunity through this dedicated area that there will be webinars, there will be extra materials for them in case studies, looking at best practices, best examples of how the courses have been delivered, but in addition, the opportunity for them to set up peer-to-peer meetings and exchanges. So, so far, this is, our model of working has been very effective. And as I mentioned, so for 2014-15 content as well, the idea is that this, that we have introduced for this year is that review is continuous. It's not just a once-a-year process, that we will be using the feedback that we get from teachers as well as from students to update, and our experts, to update the material. Does that answer your question? Great.
¿Más preguntas?
Is there any other question?
The platform into Spanish?
That's been a question I've been asked a lot in the last 24 hours. And it's also a question we get asked a lot about opportunity of content being available in other languages. At this time, the answer is no. Not at this time, just simply because in growing our program internationally, we want to make sure that we maintain high quality. And so we're focused, we are a really small team, there's 2 of us internationally. So growing our program internationally, we want to make sure that we have a sustainable program, but certainly going forward that there would be the opportunity of translation. I was talking with one of the stakeholders today who has a possible proposal for how we could approach that. But also Spanish is important to us. We are a member of a network which was founded in Brazil, and which majority of the members of the network are in Latin America. So both myself, I'm being lazy today, but both myself and Iris, we are fluent Spanish speakers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Creo que había una por aquí.
Hi, Guillermo from Second International School. I'd like to know how time-consuming this is for students. Are we looking at 1 hour a week, the whole course?
It depends. What I mentioned, because firing off quite rapidly, it's 30 to 50 contact hours at this time. What we are looking to develop is a shorter course. So we are working on presenting a lighter course, which would be between, say, 20-25 hours contact time. And how that can be implemented, these were what I mentioned, the case studies on the teacher-dedicated area of our platform. It gives them various case studies of how they can go about implementing that. So it could run through the year-long timetable, or it could be a specific project, or it could be an after-school club. Just to give a few examples of opportunities for how the program is implemented. But as I mentioned, there is a freedom for the teachers and the schools to decide how they want to run it according to their timetable. Okay.
Una pregunta por allí, me parece. Ah, aquí hay otra. Vale, esto primero.
There's another question here. We'll start in here. I would like to know what kind of contents and issues are in the application, which are the content lines, the main content lines.
Modules which take people through. The first module is a crash course in app development. This was a lesson that we learned that we actually had it at a later stage, so we have learned that both the educators and the students following the program need an immediate immersion into actually how you are developing an app prototype. And we use basic app tools such as, for those who are familiar with them, App Inventor, App Shed, we use basic development tools to actually create the wireframing, the basic model for the prototype. We then go through business modeling, marketing levels, idea screening, business modeling, marketing, and then the fifth element of the content is the pitch and competition. So it's really preparing the students that they are going through the full stage of, as I mentioned right at the beginning, of creating, designing, making, and marketing, launching their product.
Teníamos otra por aquí.
Sí.
Estaba antes.
Protect Foundation, do the students go through this course just once, or do they go for several
That's
years?
a fantastic question. I've never been asked that before. No, they go through that. They go through that the once through the schools. But to my knowledge, I don't know of any examples where we've had students repeating. But certainly, as I mentioned, what we do find is that we have schools that are producing more than a range of apps that are competing in the competition. And with the Ninja education schools, such as the one that I showed the example of in Wick, they send in and often get selected a range of groups, reach the final selection group.
So we could talk about it because we have a program in which we are trying for several years.
Fantastic. Look forward to speaking with you.
Vamos a dar las dos últimas, ¿vale? De todas formas, si tenéis...
Two last questions. If you have any other question, if we have time later when we pose all the questions, we'll establish a questions and answer moment.
What kind of technology needs a child to develop an app, and if the school have it, the technology, and if no, how you get it, or how do you make a consult to a school to choose the best technology to develop an app or develop this program?
No, it's a good question. In terms of the hardware that is needed, so they'll need computers, and then if they are making a mobile-based app, then mobiles or a good internet connection is a must. And in addition, there are opportunities of working with tablets as well. However, with tablets, it's important that they have the capacity to download information, and many of the tools are online accessible tools. I did mention then that we have agreements with a number of tech companies, and those agreements then we have the access to those tools are through our platform. So those all of the information that I've mentioned, the content materials, the tech tools, are downloadable then through our platform, and that is the portal, the conduit for accessing our content, and that is where our education partners can gain that information.
La última estaba por aquí, me parece.
La pregunta era ¿por qué competición?
The question was why competition if, for example, in some cases it happens just the opposite, that is to promote the vocational careers, because some of them will win and the other ones won't.
An important point. We learned that lesson in the first year that we ran the competition, that you cannot distinguish just one as a winner. And we are looking at ways and improving that to incentivize young people in terms of the opportunities they then have to run with their idea. And some of those ideas, that's why we're emphasizing in the pitch and competition module, that there are also the opportunities of show and tell type pitches locally and regionally, that it's not just the national competition which decides, who are the winners. However, it is important to incentivize young people, and the competition acts as that opportunity for getting them engaged, competing. That's part of the real world, and that's the key to our program as well, is it's about bringing the real world into the classroom so that young people are prepared for when they go out into the big wide world. It's a competitive world, so they're ready and prepared for it.
Muy bien.
Thank you very much.
Pues muchas gracias, Elena.
Gracias.
Bien. Bueno, vamos a dar paso a la siguiente.
Well, let's move on to the next innovation, that is Young Math. It will be explained by John Mython, who is its founder, and Scott McKee, that is the CEO. They are in Canada. And I think that the only thing that we can say about this innovation, or the most interesting thing, is that you should think, if you are teachers, think on a student that really wants to go to the math class, or think on yourselves. When you were children, you wanted to go to the maths class. I don't know if this really matches your profile, but well.
What's that? So I'm very honored to talk to you today, and I wanted to thank Telefónica and Up Social for inviting us here. I wanted to start today by asking you a question. I'm curious to know how many people here believe they were born to be mathematicians. So you could have made discoveries in math, you could have gone on in math. How many people? Not many. How many people sometimes found math a bit mysterious or difficult? You struggled a bit. So I'm in that category. I'm a mathematician, but I almost failed calculus the first time. I was saved by the bell curve, brought me up to a pass, so I struggled myself. And about 15 years ago, I started a charity in my apartment to start helping kids and tutoring kids. The charity is called Jump Math, and our goal is to help kids realize their full potential in mathematics, and also teachers. Our society faces a number of problems. We had a financial crisis across the world. We have trouble developing sustainable economies. We have trouble eradicating poverty. And I think one of the reasons we struggle with these problems is because we haven't addressed a deeper root cause. And the reason we haven't addressed that cause is because it's invisible to most people. Most people can't see it. And I call the problem intellectual poverty. And I'll try and explain today what I mean by that. So this is I wanted to start with some data. This is a case study. This is data from a school in Toronto. This is a grade 5 class that was tested on a standardized test at the beginning of the year. And this shows the distribution of their marks. They had kids as low as the 9th percentile, as high as the 75th, and on average they were in the 54th percentile. And this distribution is very common. That would represent about a 2 grade level difference between the top and the bottom. And in all the schools I've visited, that's common. This is actually a private school where kids are getting a lot of extra support and so on, and we're still seeing those differences. In Ontario, which does quite well on international tests, still by the end of grade 6, many kids are struggling, and this is universal across the world. And I think we've accepted that as a society. No one's marching in the streets. People would like kids to do a bit better or to do as well as the top performing PISA countries. But we're not that deeply concerned about this problem. The teacher in this class tried the Jump Math program for a year. She used our teacher's guide lessons and followed them very closely. And this is what the bell curve looked like a year later. The kids on average were in the 98th percentile, and the lowest student was in the 95th. A year later, of the 18 kids, 17 signed up to write the Pythagoras math competition, which is usually for very strong students, and 14 of the 17 got awards of distinction on the Pythagoras. So grade 5 is very late to intervene, and by that time the class looked like a very strong class, almost a gifted class. And this is what I mean by intellectual poverty. We think this is the potential that exists in children in mathematics and in every subject, and there's a growing body of evidence in cognitive science that says that this is possible in any subject. Now, we've seen these results on a much bigger scale. We participated in a randomized controlled study in about 30 classrooms, and in that study the JUMP students progressed at twice the rate of the control group on a number of standardized measures. Based on that result, the U.S. Department of Education gave funding to this team of cognitive scientists to do a 2-year study that's happening in Canada, even though it's being financed by the U.S. Department of Education. We also are participating in this larger study.
Empezamos a
one in Harlem, the Bronx, and Brooklyn, where the researchers were very astonished at how excited the kids got about math and how excited the teachers got. So the question is, if what we're seeing is true, if kids really do have this potential, why aren't we seeing it? Could the problem be with the children? It doesn't appear to be the problem. What about the teachers? Many people will complain about teachers, but we actually think the problem doesn't lie there either. Teachers will admit that they don't often know a lot of math, particularly elementary teachers. I once asked a group of 700 teachers why, when you have a whole number like 7 and you divide it by 2/3, you can flip and multiply and get the right answer. And someone in the audience yelled out, because you get the right answer. And teachers are astonished when I show them how easy it is to explain. It's a very simple problem and easy to explain. And they say, why don't we know this? Why aren't we given this training or the support to do this? So we found that teachers are very willing to learn the math. They get excited to see their students succeed, and they'll train and mentor other teachers. So it's in Canada, JUMP has become something of a movement with teachers inspiring other teachers because the data speaks for itself. So could the problem be with pedagogies? In most schools we see there's two extremes. Some people use a sort of rote method where there's not a lot of excitement, things are drilled and memorized. At another extreme you see discovery, where kids are left to discover things on their own. And there's now a lot of evidence that suggests you need a blend of those, a balance. Kids should be encouraged to discover things, but they also need to be guided more than people thought. They need more practice and assessment. Problems need to be broken down into smaller steps. And this is what JUMP tries to provide for teachers. The bigger question, I think, is our society complicit in these problems at all? And we think the problem really starts with our attitudes. There's research that shows as early as kindergarten, kids start comparing themselves to each other and deciding who's smart and who's not smart in mathematics or other subjects. And we allow those comparisons to go on. We don't do anything to stop them. But effectively, when we do that, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because the kids who decide they're not talented stop paying attention, their brains stop working, they stop remembering things or engaging. And then the gap just grows wider and wider, and you get more and more anxious kids. So that teacher was able to shift the bell curve so dramatically because she made all the kids feel from the beginning of the year that they were capable of learning math, and she demonstrated that daily through their success. So JUMP is a charity that's growing very quickly in North America. We believe that to be successful, we don't just need to reach a large mass of children, we also need to prove that we're accelerating their progress, which is why we're engaged in so much research. And we think it's very important that school boards and society in general start having higher standards of evidence. That we don't ask teachers to do things unless they're proven or have a great deal of evidence. We allow teachers to innovate, to experiment, to try things, and to gather data. Because in the end, we should be driven by data if we really want to approach education scientifically. We realize that we would never be able to give teachers enough professional development to allow them to design great lessons, and especially mathematically sound and interesting lessons. So we wrote teachers' guides lessons, which are available on our website at JUMP Math. You can just go in and register and see all the guides. We have lessons from grades 1 to 8 for the full curriculum in North America. We also have training offered. We offer training to teachers, and we're trying in many school boards now to set up groups of teachers who can become master teachers or mentors for the other teachers. So I'll just say a few words about our more general aims, and then Scott will talk a bit about the business plan and what's happening in Spain. But I think, we all know there's an economic loss associated to having a population that doesn't understand math. It's hard to fill jobs. There's also a very undeveloped sense of risk in our society. That's why we had a housing crisis. That's why we have an environmental crisis, because we do not understand risk on any level. But I actually think there's a deeper loss that most people wouldn't believe. People would think kids were stunted if they didn't see any beauty in a mountain or a star. But we think it's natural for kids to graduate from high school with no understanding of the invisible beauty of the world, the awe-inspiring laws of nature, the incredible connections, and the incredible elegance of the design of the universe. And young kids have a sense of that. They have an amazing sense of curiosity, of wonder, and it's shut down by failure, over and over being told they can't do these things. I've seen children cheer for math. I've seen them beg to stay for recess, which is unbelievable. I even broke up a fight once by telling the bully if he didn't apologize, I wouldn't give him his bonus question. And he apologized to get his bonus question in math. So there's an unbelievable sense of joy in learning that we are not nurturing in children. And we think it's the right of every child to use every part of their brain and to appreciate the universe and its beauty on every level. So I'll hand it over to Scott. Thank you.
First, I just want to say, in case any of you are doubting what John said about kids getting excited about math and really finding joy in it, I have to admit that when I first met John, I questioned his assertion that children were asking to stay in at recess to do math. But since being at Jump Math, I've heard that over and over from teachers, which quite frankly blows my mind, even though I'm doing what I'm doing. But it's the truth. The kids, as they begin to learn and appreciate all that they can learn and the new knowledge they've acquired, they get incredibly excited about what they're doing. So just to tell you a little about how we're doing, since 2006-07, we've grown at a compound annual rate of 34% per year. We expect that to continue this year. Our approach is it's very grassroots. One of our board members calls it insurgency. And we believe that this rate will actually increase as time goes on because more and more we're getting interest at the school board level and the ministry level. And one of the things that we're very excited about here is the openness that we're seeing to Jump Math and all the people that we've met. So that's amazing. Our business model, we're a registered charity, but we follow a social enterprise model. So we provide print and digital program resources as well as teacher professional development and support, and the majority of our revenue comes from sales. This year, almost 60% of our revenue comes from sales. As we go on, we believe that we can become sustainable in North America and then use that excess to grow Jump Math throughout the world, especially in countries that would not have the resources to self-fund. Our aspirations for Spain. So it's really, we want to validate Jump Math in the Spanish context and then move toward widespread adoption. So in 2013-14, we were very excited to be able to do a limited scale pilot in Barcelona, especially considering that we had only English language materials to offer. So the fact that teachers got on board so quickly and as many as they did and used the program with fidelity and are now expressing great enthusiasm is incredibly exciting for us. This year we hope to expand the pilots across Spain and do some more formal evaluation than we were able to do this year. And then starting in 2015-16, we hope to roll out Spanish language editions. And then hopefully the sky's the limit. So thank you very much, and take your questions. Brian?
Preguntas, dudas, comentarios.
Any questions, suggestions? Questions, suggestions? There's a hand up over there.
Apps. You said your revenues comes from sales. I guess you do an approach to schools. In the case of Spain, you approach schools directly, and the teachers or the school, they buy the booklets. And do you approach both private and public schools, as we call them here, concertados or públicos, or it's only the public schools that are your main target in Spain? I mean,
we don't discriminate, is what I would say. In Canada, our materials are used by both public and private schools. I mean, John created the program with inner city children in mind. So the idea was to help the kids who are most in need catch up. But in fact, as you can see from the results that John showed, it works for everybody. And really, the great thing about Jump Math is that we don't just close the gap, we raise the bar and still close the gap. So here in Spain, we would hope to provide jump math to both public and private. Your system is somewhat different than ours in that you have public schools that are a kind of a hybrid of public and private schools. So that's a large segment, and we wouldn't want to miss that.
Yeah, some of the top private schools in Canada now are using JUMP. Even though our intention was to help poorer populations, it's being used more generally. And we try and make it very affordable. I mean, a student book in Canada costs about $6.50 if you buy a class set. We've tried to make it, because teachers sometimes bought them themselves, we tried to make it affordable. And people can access the teacher's guides lessons online. We've also tried to make it easier for teachers to use. We have smartboard lessons that can be projected now. Kids can come up and manipulate the diagrams and so on.
Yeah.
Yes.
En Barcelona fue el consorcio.
In Barcelona, it was the educational consortium between the government, the regional government, and the City Hall of Barcelona that fostered the implementation of this pilot in the public schools of the city, and they have made the evaluation. In the next year, we will be opening many more schools who are willing to use the material in English, even though they may be giving classes in other languages in Spain. But we've got private schools also interested who are coming through us or going directly to them to purchase the books from Canada or from Spain. Any more questions over here?
I wanted to ask you, how do you integrate this research of the brain, the functioning of the work, this evidence you were quoting in the methodologies you actually implement? Is it a trial and error, or do you, this cognitive science that you mentioned several times, and do you adopt this problem-solving approach in the way you then propose exercises? What is the your approach to integrate that?
That's a good and complex question. So this is something we stumbled upon. We just developed over years and years, 15 years in classrooms observing kids. We weren't aware of the cognitive science, really. It just came from experimenting and trying it. But recently, we've had quite a bit of recognition. I was asked to give a keynote at the Aspen Brain Forum, and last year I published an article in Scientific American Mind that you can find on our website. Just Google jumpmath.org, and there's a link to the article. A teacher once said to me, JUMP isn't really rocket science, it's just good teaching. It's things that teachers tend to recognize but haven't been allowed to do. So the idea that kids should discover things, that's a great idea, but if you don't guide the discovery, there's absolutely rigorous research now showing that the majority of kids flounder, they develop anxieties, they don't do well. You have to break discovery into more manageable steps for the general school population. There's also research that shows, for instance, number facts are more important than people thought. People have been, in North America, people have said, just give the kids calculators, the numbers will come out of the calculators. But there's research now that shows our working memories are very poor, and if you don't memorize your facts, all of your mental space goes into trying to remember the numbers. And you can't see patterns, you can't make predictions. So kids need more basic skills than people thought. But that doesn't mean you have to drill them and kill them. You can play games, you can let them see patterns. You can blend discovery with guidance and practice in a very effective way. And the most shocking thing for me is, I'm a playwright also, and when I stepped into classrooms, I thought of the kids as an audience. And the only advantage we have of putting kids in groups of 25 is that they will never get more excited than as an audience. But if only half the class is succeeding, you'll never have an audience effect. As soon as you let all the kids experience some success, then they get extraordinarily excited, and you might say that's not realistic. to have them all succeed. But Mary Jane's results and other results suggest that for the vast majority of kids, they should all be able to succeed. And what's stopping them is their attitudes, their fear of math, their idea that they have to have a gift for it, rather than that hard work, practice will help them. So that's also, there's a famous cognitive scientist, Carol Dweck, who's on our website in a video, who found that kids with a growth mindset who think that their success depends on hard work and practice rather than having a gift do much better than kids who think they just have to have a natural ability for it. And she watched a jump class and said that the math is a perfect subject for this because you can keep kids in a zone where they're always doing something that looks hard, they're always taking a risk, but they're having success because you can break math into such small steps. It's like a video game. They can get to higher and higher levels. So when you do that collectively with a class, you get an incredible effect. So if you want to know more about the cognitive science, go on our website, and on the homepage you'll find an article from Scientific American Mind.
Más preguntas, una por aquí.
More questions over here?
From what you're telling, it is somehow connected with gamification.
With what?
Gamification, I mean the way to get kids being engaged by the mechanics of playing,
right,
but not actually playing.
That's right. We're working with a tech company in the States, we hope, and someone who watched a video said, this is gamification. I didn't know that. I had no idea. For me, it was more, as a playwright, telling a narrative, having a series of challenges that the kids know where they're going, and also incrementally raising the level of difficulty. Those things seem natural to me. And there's a sociologist, Durkheim, who said we never feel anything more intensely than when we feel collective effervescence. And I think that you can get a collective intelligence in a room where everyone's minds are working much more efficiently because they're excited together. And then also kids stop competing for the wrong reasons. They compete against the problem to solve the problem rather than just to be better than the other kid. Some of the data we've seen suggests that kids become more cooperative. They help each other more when they're not competing for marks.
Yes, I want to ask you your opinion about the Singapore method. Is there any relation with your idea?
Yeah, I think the Singapore program is one of the strongest I've ever seen. It's a very good program. It's mathematically rigorous. It's sensible. Sometimes I think what we've tried to do is break things into much smaller steps of assessment. They use tape diagrams, which are bars that represent magnitudes, extremely effectively. If you look at the jump materials, we've broken it down into even smaller steps. So there are a lot of similarities, and it's a program that we really respect.
Más preguntas para John.
Any more questions for John or Scott? You can ask in English or Spanish. Here's one. Hi, good afternoon. I'm a teacher, a primary school teacher, and many times I find the difficulty that children don't understand the reasoning behind problems or the problems themselves, and when they do the math, it's the same thing. And I've found my students are between 8 and 9 years old, and all the subjects they say math is the worst, that they don't like it. So I'd like to understand and know if in your project there is some way that we can get them to like the subject and it not be so hard for them to answer problems. They can learn the steps to follow to solve problems, and it won't, and in a way that won't be boring and mechanical when they're doing the calculation.
Yes, I'll give you all a problem right now. Suppose there's 1,250 people in line. Someone's 1,250th, and another person is standing 123rd in line. How many people are between them? What would you do? Like someone's 1,500 and something, someone's 120. What are you going to do to find how many are between them? What's your natural instinct? Subtract, right? Would that give you the right answer? Most of you are probably frozen. I happen to know that will give you the wrong answer, not because I'm a genius or was born with a gene that told me that. It's because I've learned every problem-solving book in the book, every problem-solving method that's around. I would never deal with numbers that big. I'd put 5 people in line. Imagine someone 5th in line and 2nd in line. How many are between them? There's only 2. If I subtract, I get 3, because subtraction counts the steps, not how many are in between. So you can train kids by giving them problems where they learn those methods. That's the most effective method in problem solving, is start with a simpler problem. Don't try and solve the big problem, start with a simpler one. For kids to enjoy that and do it, they have to believe they can do it. So you have to start them on smaller problems, and you have to teach them rigorously those methods. You can't just let them guess or discover, but you can guide them to discover it. So, and the surprising thing is when you do that, they love math, even abstract math. They love. If you look on our website, you'll see some quotes. In London, England, in one of the most violent schools I've ever seen, I taught kids how to read binary codes, like the zeros and ones, and the kids went nuts. They thought they were little code breakers. They wanted longer and longer codes. And then you can do a mind reading trick. And when the kids figured out the connection, they all wanted to come up to do the mind reading trick. And on the 3rd day like that, when we came in, the kids cheered. They were the worst behaved kids in the school, because they felt they were doing this beautiful, difficult math, and they naturally loved it. And these were grade 6, which is old. So I think it's a tragedy that we're not using math as a tool for social justice, because we think it's hard. It's not hard. The problem I gave you, all math can be reduced to simple steps like that. The problem is teachers aren't given the resources to learn that, and that's why we wrote our teacher's guides, so that you can learn by teaching. So I hope that answers your question.
I just wonder, we start the year with what we call confidence building units, because we think it's important for the kids to actually see their ability before they dive in. So the confidence building units aren't designed to teach math as much as they're designed to show the children what their abilities are. And in fact, we get emails from teachers frequently expressing their own surprise at what their children could do, because kids who they thought didn't have an aptitude for math were suddenly doing things that they had never guessed that they could do. So that gets the year off to a good start from both the teacher and the student perspective. And then, as John said, the program is built in an incremental way, so that there isn't a point at which the kids feel that they're overwhelmed or get a sense of hopelessness, because that's the point at which kids give up and it all becomes frustrating to them. The practice is subtly varied, and that also helps the kids constantly feel that they're learning something, and that's where the joy comes from, and that's what keeps them wanting more.
Una pregunta por allí.
Hi. Thanks for your presentation. Very remarkable. I wanted to ask you about the model and what's the vision. I really like the social enterprise model, and that you're making sales from the learning teaching books to become sustainable. But my thought is that this should be actually the way it's done, that this should be the standard way of teaching in schools. So wouldn't you want to infiltrate the basic curriculum and that this becomes the norms in the school? So I don't know if that's working with government or just going bigger than just selling the teaching books.
We're selling to teachers in the sense of saying, here's a great program, you should use it. And in fact, most of our spread is through word of mouth. It's not us selling to teachers, it's teachers telling teachers about Jump Math. But it's in fact, it's the schools and the school districts that are buying the books. So we are actually engaging. It's just that we're coming in at a grassroots level much of the time, and we're actually starting to climb that ladder. So.
Yeah, we've started now, last year we started to develop many partnerships with whole school boards for the first time. It's taken a long time because our methods are a bit different. But also, I mean, we'd love as many schools as possible to use JUMP, but we would feel we'd succeeded if we raised the standards of evidence and the standards of instruction, even if other programs were being used. That's why we're doing so much research, to show what kids can do and to have a minimal standard for math programs. Also to help teachers learn the math and to have permission to innovate. We'll be happy if school boards open up more to evidence and innovation.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bueno, vamos a pasar a la última.
Well, now we'll move on to the last innovation. We have been really lucky. It hasn't been on purpose, but we had we've had different types of innovations. One that was more digital, one more basic, and now we have one that's much more scientific from Germany. It's called Science Lab, and Finita Villaveces will tell us about it.
Bueno, buenas noches. Mi nombre es Finita.
I'm Finita Villaveces, and I'm representing Science Lab. It's an initiative that came about in Germany, and as many programs that have been presented today, it came out with from PISA. Germany thought they had a great system, and back in 2002, the first PISA report said, no, sorry, you're not doing as well as you thought you were. Your children don't know how to read, they don't know how to add, and if we go to the scientific contest, you're really bad off. So what happened was we decided to try to get to the students at a very early age. Our hypothesis is that children who start science in puberty are too old. Children are fascinated by the world surrounding them when they're little bitty, and they're always asking questions like, what happens if I turn the light on and off? Why does it go on and off? Why do we have that rainbow? All sorts of things. So the program we designed is focused on children who have not had have been exposed to science in school, and there's an innate need in persons to know their environment, to study their environment, and to understand it. We're talking about children from age 4 to 10. And more or less at 10 to 12, they start studying biology, chemistry, physics, and our aim is that when they get to that age, they have a clear idea of what's happening in the world so that they will be able to focus sciences without fear and without being afraid. I mean, a lot go in saying, oh, I'm not going to be able to do science. I don't understand science. I won't know how to do it. And what we've tried to do is help foster STEM in as many fields as possible. We've got education for children in schools. We have kindergarten education. We have programs for children in their free time, which is completely unlinked to their academic schedule. And then we have programs for children and parents when they're together. Many times the child is asking the parent, not the teacher, why do we have a rainbow, or why does the light switch work the way it does? And many times parents don't have the knowledge, and they may have time to stop and talk, but they need to get help for the answers to explain these things to their children. And we've got the official educational part, which is training for teachers in primary school or kindergarten, or just fostering knowledge in other areas. And the methodologies that guide us along are the basis for the quality of our program. First of all, it's the child's question that we are focused on, that's important to us. It doesn't matter the age of the child is not so important. It's what they're asking, because they're growing. A child at 4 has a little sibling or has an older sibling and sees that there's a difference in their development. So the idea here is to take what the child is what the child focus on and help use that to focus and explain to the child what he's asking about.
solamente estamos...
And we're not only taking the children as the center of learning, as the creator of the questions for learning, but also the children. The kid is the boss. The kid is who asks and is the one that must be able to answer. The person that is working with people in science, with kids in science lab, is just a coach. Through experiences, through questions, through conversations among all the group, it's taking the kids on the correct path to find the correct answer. So the kid asks, "Why do you have a rainbow?" "Oh, let's go out on a sunny day. Let's use water and let's see what happens. And let's try to find out what are the correct questions, the correct answers." Children at early stages are people that observe a lot. The adults don't have time and we are always running. So it's basic that we try to think about when we were kids and let children observe, and to enable them to think and to give them the opportunity of verbalizing all those things that they are living. They have to see, they have to understand that, and they have to generate the question or the next answer. So we must get out of that process and to give them their time. It's not important that we implement 5 experiments during one class. It should be enough to implement one if children have acquired the key concepts. It's more important. Quality is more important than quantity. So many times the materials are delivered, the materials for experiment are delivered. Children know what they have to do and they make up a new experiment. That's great. So let's see what we're going to take from that new experiment that children have invented, have made up. And in the end, what the teacher has to do, what we expect, is the teacher to be able to take the important points, the key points, to summarize them and to give some kind of counsel to the children. Everything is based on the scientific method. We'll issue a question, we let the children generate an hypothesis of why it should be that, then comes the experiment and then the verification of that hypothesis, if it was correct or not. Many times the conclusions take us to the fact that the hypothesis wasn't true, so we have to reformulate the question, the hypothesis, and we have to re-implement the experiments so that we can reach a correct conclusion. It's possible that a session it's possible that we have to reformulate hypothesis without a correct conclusion, but since it's important that children know how to follow the track and follow the way until they reach a correct conclusion, or a conclusion that makes sense. When we are working with sciences, it's something that we always want to highlight. We can use sciences not only for science, but also because of the fact that when children are implementing sciences, they are developing competencies. So a child that is implementing sciences is working with maths, and no matter what his or her age, we can order things from the bigger to the smaller, or even more complex maths processes in bigger, in older children, for example. But we can use sciences to develop those competencies. We have the language competencies. Some time ago I mentioned that children observe and need some time to process that information and to verbalize it. And it's very important within this framework to ask the children for precision in what they are explaining. No, this happened because it was like that. No, we must see what the thing is, what was the phenomenon they observed, and what was the result of the observed phenomenon. In that sense, we are fostering children on from a language point of view. Now, let's imagine, for example, if in a Spanish environment we start speaking in English, in science, we establish Science Lab in English, for example, or in Germany, for example, we implement Science Lab in Spanish. Well, they are just learning on their own. We have the social attitudes, the children from children that experiment are people that have to wait for their turn to talk. They have to wait. They have to listen to the rest of the people, and this way they receive some basic education rules that was very necessary in the daily life. And it's what we would call the methodology, where children are learning how to work from an organized point of view. They are learning how to work with a method, with a basically scientific method, and they are learning to convert information into knowledge. They are learning these things. It's not just information. This is very beautiful, but if there's no quality behind the program, we're over. So we have to assure quality in two stages, at internal level and at external level. At internal level, what we have done is that we have developed a spiral curriculum. So all throughout the years of Science Lab, there are 5 subjects that are present, that are being tackled with more or less importance depending on the age of the children. For example, electricity. A kid of 4 years old is simply connecting a battery with 2 wires and a light. A boy of 5 years old is learning the difference between a parallel circuit and a serial circuit, and which are the implications that I have a serial or a parallel circuit. Older children are building electromagnets, and they are seeing how it works. The subjects and the issue that we have throughout the curriculum is air, electricity, colors, water, and sound. This doesn't mean that are the only issues. Every course has 14 issues, but these 5 subjects repeat throughout all the way, so that children can acquire a deeper knowledge on them. From the external point of view, the most important thing for us is the skills acquisition. We want to teach the people that is going to interact with the children how they should formulate questions. For example, how can I take a kid inside the system, for example, if he wants to go out. And on the one hand, we have the capacity, the people that offer extracurricular courses out of the education system. These are people that have a Science Lab learning which is much more deep, and are in contact with many children. Once these people has implemented or has reached an expertise level, we train this person as trainer for teachers. Nobody that hasn't worked at least 1 year and with 100 children in Science Lab has the capacity to teach teachers that implement Science Lab in their classes. So we know that maybe the system is not as explosive as we would like to, but it guarantees the quality of people that are facing children. When we have trained a person for the extracurricular courses or within the scholar system, that person is with a mentor in the beginning. Well, the experiment didn't work, the questions that you posed I didn't obtain the expected result with them. I obtained this variation. I've been proposing this change. For all those things, there's a feedback system that we take step by step. After every class, we analyze it, and that enables us to make the fine-tuning to the program. So every time there's a new series of programs, it's a little bit more fine-tuned and a little bit closer of what children want and what children expect from us. Well, this is basically what is Science Lab. This is our philosophy. It's in the proverb of I heard and I forget, I see, I remember, I make and I learn. To make. That's the key point of Science Lab. Thank you very much.
Preguntas.
Is there any question? Any question? Do you want to post any question about Science Lab?
Hola, buenas tardes. Me llamo Eduardo.
Hello, my name is Eduardo Serra. I work in public policies here in Telefónica. I'd like to know how many children are the groups made of for the learning? I was having a look at the example of the rainbow. If one boy is interested, for example, in the rainbow, another one on the moon, another one on the waves of the sea, what's the process that the teacher follows to assist the requirement of one of them and to make the other children to be interested? Well, first of all, for example, the teacher still has some kind of capacity of dealing with the classroom. Today, the subject of today is rainbow. Let's talk about rain. Let's talk about light. Let's talk about light with rain. And later on, you'll have your moment to see how, for example, the moon has formed. Our groups are small. For example, in the classrooms or in the extracurricular classrooms, if we are talking in the classrooms, for example, the fact of working with 8 or 10 children, it's impossible. So we divide the class in small groups. Every group has a different function within the environment of the class, or every group experiments like if it was a kid. So every group has its own material for the experiment, and they are discussing what they are seeing, what they are doing, etc. Or if it is a little bit more sophisticated with older children, we have roles that play. So they make their experiments, they have their discussions, and every group has some kind of introducer that says what were the observations, the doubts that they have, and the discussion starts in the classroom. But we have to divide them, we have to enable them to work in units as that are sufficiently small to have a dominant role. Sorry, I can't hear the speaker. So we wouldn't do different things within the same experiment in smaller groups? Yeah, that's it. Every group receives its own materials, receives the same instructions, makes the same experiment, and among all we will discuss what are the observations that we have done. Yeah, so have you measured the impact of this methodology? Yeah, we've measured it in Germany. Science Lab participated in the setting of curriculum in Bayern, in Munich, after the skills capability for teachers in primary education. They started to measure between kids of traditional education and between kids of Science Lab. The difference was quite huge. The difference was more quantitative than qualitative. They were measuring the skills development that I mentioned before, the language skills, social behavior, scientific knowledge acquisition. They were comparing children, for example, from primary education with Science Lab and children from primary education without Science Lab. And the educational system in Germany has wants to implement it or not? Well, yes or no, and yes and no. In fact, the skills acquisition that we have made has enabled us to reach 1 million children in Germany through extracurricular activities or through teachers acquisition. Well, they tolerate it. But up to now, 12 years later, the system as such is starting to open, and they're starting to pay the skills acquisition. Up to now, we have depended on donations, on associations, parents. We have depended on funds to cover the costs of the skills acquisition. There are states where where they are starting to see the difference and the need, and they are starting to fund it from the states. Let's pose the last question. Hello, I'm Isabel from the International School Cycle Castilla. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. On the same line of the impact, what I'm most worried about is not about an immediate impact. What happens about the tracking? What happens with children after for example, they are teenagers? Are you assessing the impact that this system has later on these children? Will they choose more science subjects? Will they be better scientists? Well, time doesn't enable us to make that. This was born 12 years ago, so if we have a kid that when was 4 years is within science lab, now he's 16 years old, so he hasn't finished. He is not out of the system in order to know that the impact that we think it has is there. In fact, we know, thanks to some children that have attended, children that have been in the extracurricular classes, we know that these children, well, the feedback that we are obtaining is that they are changing the way, but we can't still measure that change. Well, I have a science background, so the figures, the scientific part, I would like to know if you were thinking about to develop a scientific program to assess that impact. Well, in Germany, once the children are more than 10 years old, there are other programs that can be implemented. There's a program that is called Teenagers Investigate. When they are in the 5th level, that is would be some kind of superior education, they can create their own projects, like for example Ask for Good, but in scientific projects. They create their projects, they are held by teachers, they present their projects and at a district level, at department level, at town level, and then at a national level. And this is just one of the many projects that are collecting those children that are going out of the system. The problem in Germany is that they weren't, and there are not, there's nothing that gets that can get children from the beginning. For example, on the other hand, we have many other projects that enable them to put them on the track of that interest, but it doesn't exist what you are saying. Thank you very much, Anita. Well, we're a little bit out of time, so Mamen will summarize the other innovations that we've seen. But well, I would like to tell you that if you have any other question, if you have any kind of doubt of the innovations, to understand them better, or to understand the model or the implementation model, or if you're interested, if you see possibilities during the cocktail, please come to me or come to Mikel, and we will address you to the specific person. Well, I'm really in a hurry. I only have 3 minutes. I won't talk about technology, I won't talk about mathematics, I will talk about reading of this report. Yeah, a little bit of marketing. Well, I'd like you to read this report and to follow the same process, the same incredible process that people that have implemented this investigation have followed. We haven't set out any kind of learning sector. We want to set up formal learning, non-formal learning, whatever, and the idea is that we can reject any kind of learning. Children learn, as José Antonio Marina says, within an ecosystem that is not between 9 to 5. So the first point to behave as explorers is not to discriminate any kind of learning. The second question is that we are all imperfect. We haven't found the top initiative. Of course, we have brought here the Nile jewels, Jamaat, that has accomplished that 93% of students could improve their performance in a 50%. That's true, isn't it? Okay? Or for example, Science Lab has got into the half of schools in Germany. They have established the science curriculum in Bayern, and they are present in more than 500 primary schools. Apps for Good, well, and I should mention the figures they have. In 3 years in Catalonia, in 3 months, they have reached 6,000 students, and they have presented fantastic projects. Just these two keys: get into the report without any kind of idea. We can't reject any kind of initiative. Maybe they are not perfect, but we can learn from everything. And what have we found? We have found 7 groups, depending on activity type, and I would like to describe the potential of every group. First group are initiatives that connect the education world with business world. They make possible that children have contact with STEM professionals. They develop role games, projects with them, they visit the companies, but in addition, these initiatives are having a great impact because the STEM professionals, the companies, are helping teachers to improve their programming capacity and their didactic capacity. As you can see here, they accomplish an improvement both in students. I understand better what a scientist does, what a mathematician does. I like what they do. I've seen that they're normal people. They are not geeks, as my colleague Mikel was saying. And this enables teachers to get closer to the STEM labor world. So this where they are influencing on the psychological factor, the emotional factor, the information factor, and the social factor. The perception changes. Out of this kind, there was initiative that was that obtained the highest assessment by the jury, that is STEM from the United Kingdom, with the support of the United Kingdom government, has accomplished that 26,000 STEM responsibles go to schools and have attended to 9 out of 10 British schools in the United Kingdom, and there have been significant improvements that they have been able to assess. Another example of this initiatives is WISE. Both of the United Kingdom. It's an initiative with more than 30 years that has been trying to foster and safeguard the female talent in STEM from the school to direction to the management committees in companies, and the results are very important. They have duplicated the number of graduated women in engineering during 25 years. The second category is non-scholar activities. We have found many initiatives here that are implemented at very flexible, and they can be implemented out of the timetable in for example, museums, leisure centers. For example, they enable us to experiment new methodologies without the fear of or the pressure of the requirements of the curriculum or of the assessment systems or the formal system. On the other hand, they enable us to have motivating experiences, both the students and the teachers and the families. There's no pressure. We can have fun. And they have an important potential in conscientization. Here we have Coder Dojo that has created programming clubs for children between 7 and 17 years, from children to adults. And it works with volunteers. Children go there on a voluntary basis. It's a self-didactic methodology, and in some years from Ireland they have accomplished 11,000 regular users. They are here in some points in Spain. Divulgative activities. I will introduce one of my favorites because it's great. You'll see it now. Here there is a very different typology from initiatives that enable children to upload their videos of experiments to a reality shows, like for example this one that emerged in Qatar and is about a reality show that is called Stars of Science, so that you can make an idea. It's a master chef with the audience of MasterChef, but where there are talented people, women and men, of 22 Arab countries that are children with innovative talent. They present their idea and they make a reality show, accompanying them with mentors about how they forge the idea, how they implement prototypes, the way they can sell it. The 5th season in 22 Arab countries, so that you can make an idea. During the 2nd season, there were 7,000 applications. 4 category didactic innovation. I'm finishing. As you have seen with Jammath, Apps for Good and Science Lab, the important thing is that all these tools locate the student in the focus of the learning process. They empower the students, and this is a concept that we found. Many of them have evidences in the improvement of knowledge and skills related to STEM competencies. And as Johnny Scott mentioned, there's a big concern about the closing the gap that exists, and we have found initiatives, incredible initiatives, that enable people that have a weak socio-familiar capital have the right of accessing to maths, technology, sciences, etc. For example, Science Lab, Fenita, they have developed their activity in neighborhoods with a high percentage of immigration in Germany. The fifth point, I see that there are many teachers here. So the 5th point is teachers training. There's an initiative in the US, EMS, and it's a platform of support platform of new teachers that are accompanied by STEM veteran teachers, and they are some kind of mentors, and they solve the doubts, the practical doubts on a daily basis. We cannot ignore this kind of initiatives because the teachers are a key factor. We have found a great package of mentoring initiatives. The biggest ones come from the US because they have been testing this kind of process for 20 years. These are very effective for the academic performance, what we conceive as education affiliation, what the positive feedback of the children about his learning process and the environment and the educational environment. There's a mentoring model. I mentor, that's an initiative that accompanies high school from the beginning until they go to the university. So children choose their mentor on a free basis. They choose the profile.
And lastly, then we talk about networks. And here, in the case of Denmark, we've got the example where they generated an activity, science municipalities, which what that does is within the scope of a municipality, they generate dynamics for interaction between schools, companies, and the head of the administrators of local education, and they plan priorities. They make an agenda of priorities. This is really everything I had to say. I did stay within my time frame, and now I would like to urge you to read, not to read all at once because it would be too much, but to read bit by bit about the different initiatives. There are 20 that are absolute jewels. They're very complete, but the other 80 even though we only include a small abstract, they're also interesting to look at. So thank you very much, and thank you Fundación Telefónica for this great opportunity. Obviously, I'm only going to say thank you very much for the 2 hours and 10 minutes that you've sat here. If anyone would like a beer or a glass of wine, please join us, and we will also give you the publication on paper. Thank you for coming.